So it has finally begun. The speculation and crazy theories and hype and mystery and the lure of the next Zelda it's upon us. It is now beginning. I remember when we first heard about Zelda U, and there was all this speculation and hype for that when we knew so little. And I think that's one of the things that made it so special, is that we knew so little about the game, and when we finally got pieces of it, it just made us more and more excited. It just seemed so much more mysterious and grand and so mystical. So now we're at a point where we now have confirmation that Zelda Switch is now currently in development. The next Zelda game for the Nintendo Switch, and only for probably the Nintendo Switch this time around. So with that, I mean, there's not really much else to be said besides that in terms of actual hard news. I'll put a link in the description below from Go Nintendo. You can see some interviews, you can see the actual confirmation. Eiji Aonuma has confirmed that the game's in development, in case that hasn't been clear yet. So yeah, I mean, people have already talked about this, but what I want to get into are some of the possibilities. What can we sort of think of or consider to what we may be seeing, right? So there's a few different things we should be thinking about here, I think, in terms of the future of Zelda. One, Breath of the Wild may not actually be over yet. Yeah, we got the DLC Pack 2, the Champion's Ballad. It's pretty good. I've had a lot of fun with it. But there are some things that have led some people to believe that perhaps there could be more DLC coming in the future. I mean, there was the Explorer's Pack or something that came out, one of the final books that have come out, you know, along with like the Hyrule story and an encyclopedia, things like that, that suggest that there could be more DLC in the future. But also, in the DLC pack, you're able to acquire one whole new heart. Now the thing is, there are 2 rows of hearts, and it's incomplete. Like, you could get 2 more whole hearts to fill up the 2 rows. So it's led people to believe that maybe there could be more quests added in the future where you can get those final 2 hearts. I mean, if you have OCD, this is probably going to bother you a little bit. You can't actually complete the hearts unless, you know, you lower your stamina, but then your stamina is not complete. So there's a lot of speculation that there could be more DLC coming in the future. Now the thing is, even if there is DLC for Breath of the Wild still coming, that does not mean that there isn't the development for the Zelda Switch is not happening, that it's not going to delay, because there are multiple teams that can work on different things. This is how development goes all the time, actually, so any sort of DLC development for Breath of the Wild will have little to no effect on the development process for Zelda Switch, at least in terms of timing and when the game's going to come out. And that's a whole other question we should get into, actually. When can we expect the next Zelda for Switch? When will we even hear anything, like anything tangible, at least concept art? And the truth is, I don't expect anything at all until 2019. And why is that? Well, there are some rumors going around that the game development for Zelda Switch started actually last year. You know, because Breath of the Wild was basically done by that point. It just needs some polishing and to be ported over to the Switch, essentially. So yeah, I believe that. I think that's pretty likely, actually. The Zelda Switch already started its development process last year. But Zelda games usually have a pretty long development period. And they can really, there are some Zelda games that have only taken 2 years, like Majora's Mask, and there are other Zelda games that have taken 5, like Breath of the Wild or Skyward Sword. So then, where are we here? Are we going to be, or maybe it's going to be even longer. Maybe there's a trend where Zelda games are going to take even longer. I don't think so. I think Nintendo actually has accustomed themselves to HD development now. I think they've changed around how their divisions work. They've really worked on the efficiency of their staff and their teams, and I think they have a much more effective development process now. So I actually expect the game to not take as long as Breath of the Wild, especially if they use the physics systems that they took so long to create in Breath of the Wild, and they just kind of expand upon the ideas that we saw in Breath of the Wild. And we already know that open world Zelda there's going to be more. This isn't the first and final one. There's going to be more. That's also confirmed. So it's pretty reasonable to expect that Zelda Switch is going to be another open world Zelda, and hopefully it's going to use a lot of the physics systems and style, maybe not style, but at least the physics systems that were in place for Breath of the Wild, the things that really made it so great and beyond pretty much everything else in terms of open world games. But beyond that, it's hard to say what else we can expect from the game. Will it be a sequel? Will it be an actual direct story sequel to Breath of the Wild, or will it be a completely separate universe? Probably a completely separate universe, but it is possible that Nintendo could pull another Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask came out 2 years after Ocarina of Time. They used a lot of the same assets, they used the same engine. They literally reused the same characters and designs for Majora's Mask, and they pumped out that game in less than 2 years after the release of Ocarina of Time. So then that is possible. We could see another game in 2 years. which means we may start seeing things in 2019. It may even come out in 2019. That is possible. Is it likely? I don't know. I think 2020 might be a safer bet, right? But it's really hard to say. But if it is a kind of like a Majora's Mask sort of like sequel, what can we expect? Well, if we look at the ending story for Breath of the Wild, so spoiler alert here, if you don't want to hear about the end, I'm not going to really say much, but basically, at the end of the game, it's basically suggested that Link and the princess, you know, they are going to, you know, go around restoring Hyrule, because Hyrule is in ruins. If you've played Breath of the Wild, you know the game takes place 100 years in the future, everything's destroyed in ruins, there's very little civilization. So maybe the game's going to have something, if there is a story sequel, a direct sequel, it has something to do with expanding and rebuilding Hyrule. And you could build a whole game around that. Maybe there could be time travel involved, so you could see how the Hyrule was in the past, or maybe Hyrule could feel new again with actual cities and civilizations now instead of just a couple villages. That could be something. Also, when we look at not the champions, but their descendants, you know, like Riju, Yonobu, you know, those guys, it's possible, if you play the Champions Ballad DLC, there is a bit more emphasis placed on them, and you get a better perspective of where they're at, and they all do seem to be like the actual descendants or successors to the spirit of those champions, for, you know, the Rito, the Gorons, the Zora, the Gerudo. So maybe if this is a direct story sequel, they would also take a more focused role as, you know, the successors to the champions. That's possible. It's also possible that what I'm talking about could be DLC. They could do that, right? And then the next Zelda could be something entirely different. It's also possible that they will never actually revisit the Breath of the Wild story with DLC or story at all ever again. That's not unprecedented either. I mean, they've kind of done everything with the Zelda universe. I mean, technically, there could have been more story to be told after Majora's Mask, and we never really got a sequel to that. I would have enjoyed to see, like, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and then another game, right? Kind of like a perfect, like, actual trilogy. Because I think there was more story to be told. We never really saw what happened with Link in the future. What would that have been? Of course, if you can have ideas based off the timeline, but to see how it all went about, how Link's later life went on, it would have been interesting to see. And maybe that could be the next game. That could be the setting for the next game. That'd be really cool. We always get pretty hyped about the Hero of Time, but you know, we haven't seen him since Majora's Mask. Not in an actual mainline story game. Well, there was Twilight Princess where he was kind of dead. That's, you know, so maybe, right? But basically, there's lots of possibilities here. But for me, what I would like to see in the next Zelda in terms of gameplay, I would like to see them expand upon the open world style and the physics systems, really build upon it more so, but have more villages, more side quests, in the vein of Majora's Mask. Like, imagine if the town in Majora's Mask, Clock Town, like, there was like a dozen of those to that level. That'd be amazing. And you know what? It wouldn't really be that hard to do if they really do jump on the same Breath of the Wild engine that really minimizes development time. Teams are way bigger now. Budgets are a lot bigger now. Something like that could be feasible, on top of more classic dungeons. Like, I really enjoyed the dungeon from the DLC. But I would really like to see more dungeons in the vein of like the Forest Temple, the Fire Temple from Ocarina of Time, or, you know, some of the Skyward Sword dungeons. Those are really cool. Like the sacred, I forget the name of it, but you know, the one with that crazy like Koloktos, that giant boss with 6 arms. That area was really awesome. The name is slipping my mind, but dungeons like that would be really cool to see in another game with the physics engine and such from Breath of the Wild, but expanded upon and evolved a little bit. So there's a lot of options and possibilities with Breath of the Wild. I see there's so much potential, and I think this time around that they have a better idea of how to run the open world style. The story will probably get better. Like, the story was okay in parts in Breath of the Wild, but it was segmented, and there were some things left to be desired in terms of character development, which the DLC rectified a bit, but I think they could do an even better job. And I think on the next game for the Switch, they will be able to do that, because they, you know, it's kind of like the Breath of the Wild experience. A lot of growing was kind of like the growing pains for Nintendo. They were getting adapted to the HD development, open world style, really modernizing their engines. So I think they could really master that with the next game. And that's extremely exciting, because Breath of the Wild, in terms of reviews and my personal opinion, it is one of the greatest games ever made, and it is the game of the year. So I love that game. I'm probably still going to play it, but the next Zelda is exciting me, and I can't wait to start talking about it and speculating and theorizing what that game could mean as well. So until then, guys, let's just let the speculation begin, and I'll see you all really soon. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Yeah, alright. Bye.